Joining me now, we have Mark Polymeropoulos, former CIA senior intelligence officer and NBC News and MSNBC national security and intelligence analyst, and Tyler Pager, White House correspondent for the New York Times and co-author of 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and the Democrats Lost America. Welcome, fellas. Mark, you first here. How do you interpret Trump's new message to Putin? Does it have any teeth after he rhetorically abandoned Ukraine?
Well, Alex, first I wonder if Trump has been listening to any of his intelligence briefs, because I'm sure the intelligence community has, for weeks, if not months, told President Trump, if they had access to him, that this is exactly how Vladimir Putin has behaved in the past, will behave in the future. And so, there's kind of a little bit of naivete here. I don't think anybody in the planet expected Putin to be cooperative. He has not been. So now it is a bit interesting that Trump is lashing out a bit. But I would note that when he talks about tariffs, I mean, this is, when we talk sanctions and tariffs, this is something that, of course, the Republicans have panned the Democrats, the Biden administration in the past for proposing. So if we really want to see Trump get tough on Putin, we'll see a resumption or perhaps, increased commitments to both intelligence and military equipment to Ukraine. That would be tough. But we'll see. And again, I think that the intelligence community is certainly not surprised at Putin's behavior.
You want to put a 50-50 kind of chance on that happening, on those kinds of resumption of tariffs and the like?
I don't think Trump in any way is going to resume military equipment. So that's why I think that, and I think that Putin knows this. And so the Russians are going to try to drag this on. It will be interesting to see if the amount of patience that Trump has. There's one school of thought is that he's going to get bored of this and kind of move on, because this is of course, a conflict that is going to be incredibly difficult to solve.
So, Tyler, does Trump's new position on Putin surprise you?
I mean, I think some of the rhetoric we are seeing from the president, as Vaughn said earlier, is surprising given how much of his and his allies' ire has been targeted at Zelensky. Obviously, there was that extremely contentious meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky in the Oval Office that blew up this proposed deal on rare earth minerals. And we have seen the president try to take a much softer tact toward Putin, saying he wanted to be the negotiator who could deal with both sides. Obviously, that approach has received a lot of criticism across the aisle, largely from Democrats, but even some Republicans concerned about the more conciliatory approach he is taking toward Putin. But again, this is just one comment, and we have to see how this plays out over time. But I think what's most important to take a step back here and think about is that what Trump says is he wants a deal. He wants to be able to go out and tout that he was, as he described himself in the inauguration speech, as a peacemaker president. And so Trump is looking for tangible victories that he can brag to the American people that he solved something that, in particular, Joe Biden could not. And so I think he's growing frustrated that he does not have those wins that he promised. We'll see if that translates into any sort of success in terms of, a ceasefire or a pause in fighting that goes beyond just the limited scope they've agreed before. But I think it's really important to think about what Trump wants in this situation to understand why he's lashing out at Putin today.
Tyler, do you think Donald Trump thought it was going to be this hard, this challenging? I mean, on the campaign trail, he said day one, it'd be fixed. We all knew that wasn't going to happen. But do you think he expected it to be this hard?
Yeah, well, he was asked about this, why he said, in 24 hours he would have a deal. And he said that he was being sarcastic and that he knew that it would take some time. But it's clear that he is growing frustrated, that the language that he's using is reminiscent of how he talks about a lot of people. But it's particularly unique in the way that he's approached Putin, and not just in this term, but throughout his political career. So I think there is clearly a sense of frustration. I think he thought he could bring the sides to the table and strike a deal. He's been very eager to tout his successes on foreign policy, the freeing of American citizens who were jailed or imprisoned in various countries around the world. So it's clear that he wants to get a deal. I think he is surprised by the intransigence he's seeing from Putin, but most foreign policy observers, even across the aisle, are not surprised, given this is Putin's playbook that he's adopted throughout his time dealing with the United States and previous presidents.
Okay. Mark, Defense Secretary Hegseth, he's facing some renewed scrutiny after the Wall Street Journal report revealed that he brought his wife to 2 meetings with foreign military counterparts where sensitive information was being discussed. What are the security implications here?
Well, I think this, goes to show that a lot of the concerns we had about Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, it's coming to fruition. He doesn't seem to be taking security precautions seriously. This, government business is serious. being the head of the Department of Defense is an incredibly important job. And so we have kind of seen a pattern here. And I think what you see, particularly coming from the Wall Street Journal, let's be honest, this is kind of the dean of conservatism in American media, not only the editorial board, but also the national security reporters. You see kind of this drip, drip, drip. And I think my sense is that some in the Pentagon are kind of tiring of Hegseth's behavior. He seems to be secure. President Trump has noted time and again that he does not want to fire Hegseth. But look, the signal kind of fiasco was, to many of us in the national security world, it's such an egregious violation of security principles. He's certainly on the hot seat. This story is not going to help. And I think you'll see more. There might be more signal chats, but there's a lot of scrutiny on him now, and I think for good reason.
And Tyler, you had new reporting this week inside Trump's internal deliberations of potentially firing his national security advisor, Mike Waltz. He has since told NBC News he's not going to be firing anyone in the Signal Group chat scandal. But what can you tell us about his thought process this week? And would you bet good money on it that he won't end up firing someone?
Yeah, I'm not in a position to bet money on anything. I'll just tell you what we've learned. My colleague Maggie Haberman and I reporting about the conversations that the president has had with allies over the last few days, casting about what he should do with the Mike Waltz situation. And I think Mark's point is really important here. President Trump said he does not blame Secretary Hegseth for this signal issue, very clearly putting the blame on Mike Waltz. And he spent the last few days asking allies what he should do, ultimately had a meeting in the Oval Office with Mike Waltz, and then came away the next morning deciding that he was not going to fire him. Now, I think it's important to be clear that the part of the calculation here is that he doesn't want to give in to the media cycle and prolong it. It's very clear he's trying to change the subject, move on to other issues. But at the same time, it is also very clear that Mike Waltz standing within the White House has been somewhat diminished. Now, if that means he stays for another year or just 3 weeks, obviously that's up to the president. And there could be more coming out in terms of his relationships throughout the West Wing. That is Mike Waltz. So I think we have to wait and see exactly how this unfolds over the next few weeks. But I would not rule anything out when it comes to President Trump and staffing. But it is clear that the president is taking a different approach to staffing than he did in his first term. He acknowledged that he did not want to repeat some of the chaos and firings that really characterized his first term in office.
Yeah, but here's the deal. We're not changing the subject, Mark, because NBC News has new reporting. Vice President Vance's role in this Signal Group chat, it has angered some senior Republican legislators. They're skeptical, of why he was questioning Trump's directive to conduct the strikes. So are we seeing a growing rift among Republicans on foreign policy?
So, Alex, what was really interesting to me on the Signal chat was not the tactical military planning, which is really bad, of course. That was classified information that could have gotten U.S. pilots hurt. But it was the policy discussions, which, by the way, also are absolutely classified. I mean, they even named it the Small Group PC Principals Committee. That's actually the name of a meeting that you have in the Situation Room. But the policy discussions were really interesting because Vance seems to be kind of pursuing what we know to be more of an isolationist bent. He certainly has this kind of pathological hatred of Europe. But there did seem to be policy divisions. And so that spilled out in public. And I think, President Trump probably does not like that. And that's, I think, reflective of some of the Republican allies being critical of the vice president.
I got to say, it's going to be interesting to see what both Waltz and Pete Hegseth receive when they go to Europe next time. The kind of reception could be a little chilly. We'll see. All right, you both, thank you so much.